dear colleagues, today we would like to present findings on Subregional Insights for North and Central Asia, presentation of ESCAP SDG Progress Report 2021. Next slide, please. I will speak English, and you can see also Russian translation on the same slides. So key findings. We can present that only two goals, 10 and 16 for North and Central Asia, on track to be achieved compared to 4 on-track goals during the previous report. And 3 goals, goal 11, 13, and 14, regressing. Mainly, this is environmental related goals. COVID-19 impacted SDG progress in North and Central Asia region, especially inequality. And I also would like to highlight data availability is still a limitation for the subregion. I can tell later, but we must tell you that only 55% of data available for North and Central Asia. Next slide, please. At this slide, you can see the real progress in North and Central Asia. You can see the red color script, which necessary to pay attention for regressing. So some progress have been achieved, but 3 goals are regressing, and the rest goals record some progress, though accelerated actions are needed to them to be on track. Next slide, please. So you can see progress expected by 2030 for North and Central Asia. You can shift to next slide, which is in Russian. I will be saying in English. So graphs in the presentation are also included in this report, and you can see that only a few indicators are in green, which indicates maintain progress to achieve target. So for North and Central Asia, majority are coded in gray, which means cannot be achieved, and no sufficient data available. Next slide, please. So what about on-track goals in North and Central Asia? As I mentioned, only 2 goals achievable, that is number 10. Similarly, sub-region is on track on reduced inequalities, goal 10, you can see, but without sufficient data. And the measurable targets available show that the sub-region is on track to achieve peace, justice, and strong institutions, goal 16, due to decline in international homicides and a number of detected victims of human trafficking, and more effective management of government budget and expenditures. So next slide. What about regress goals in North and Central Asia? As I mentioned, 3 goals are regressing. This is Sustainable Cities and Communities, Goal 11, Climate Action, Goal 13, and Life Below Water, Goal 14. All 3 regress goals are environmental related, and environmental protection needs to be integrated into socio-economic development in the member states of the region. And among indices in the subregion that urgently require reverse trends by the for these goals to be enhanced include road traffic deaths. They are still increasing in our subregion, disaster-related deaths, and missing persons, and greenhouse gas emissions. So member states need to pay special attention to these trends. Next slide, please. Yes. So what is further subregional insights on SDG progress? I kindly request you to look to the left picture, which shows prevalence of food insecurity among the most regressed indicators in the subregion. So you can see the situation with food security is very fragile. And look at the middle picture. Practically 9% labor income loss in 2020 compared to 2019. You can see that North and Central Asia, the second after the South Asia, you see at this indicator. And look to the right picture, it shows the highest percentage increase in out-of-school children and youth. Next slide, please. So you can see SDG data availability. As I mentioned, it has improved, but many gaps still remain. You can see in dark green the available indicators, as I mentioned, 55%. Yeah, this picture shows by year available indicators, and the right picture shows availability data by each goal. So a lot, still a lot in gray, and our member states needs to work on data availability. Next slide, please. So at this slide, you can see what measures member states need to take to help achieve the 2030 agenda. I must tell you that we organized a number of meetings. Annually, we organize a North and Central Asia multi-stakeholder SDG forum. And last year, we organized SPECA Economic Forum and Governing Council jointly with Kyrgyzstan. We organized a number of AGMs. And the outcome of this meeting shows the increasing and emerging vulnerable groups, problems with accessibility and connectivity, and environmental aspects sidelined. What is necessary to do? We need, of course, to put people first, to facilitate inclusive digital transformation further, and integrate green economy strategies into national plans. Next slide, please. a few words about upcoming events. So soon this month, on 23rd, 26 March, we will have the most important event for SDGs monitoring and implementation, Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development. That is the major event in Asia and the Pacific on SDGs, which reports to HLPF in New York. And subregion, North and Central Asia, as well as other subregions, contribute annually to this forum, as I mentioned, through North and Central Asia multi-stakeholder SDG forum, which we had last year in Almaty due to COVID-19 pandemic. And this year we will be organizing jointly with Turkmenistan as co-chair in Ashgabat. Next slide, please. That is a very important slide, which promotes national SDG Tracker. ESCAP developed SDG Gateway portal, which is available at ESCAP website. And today, National SDG Tracker as a part instrument of this SDG Gateway is also launched. And any country in North and Central Asia or Asia Pacific can go to this national SDG tracker and use to make the assessment of SDG progress using its own data. They can put and submit their own available data, additional data, and look what is going on with their SDG implementation. So it's very useful tool, not only for the governments, but it can be also used by resident coordinators in each country, by UN country teams, and our other stakeholders who are assisting to each member states in the implementation of SDGs. Next slide, please. And at this slide, you can see how SDG Gateway looks. This is knowledge sharing portal of ESCAP. You can see how you can use available statistics data for assessment of SDG progress. And you can develop your own charts, your own diagrams, and to see what is happening with SDG implementation in each country. I think this is the last slide. Thank you very much. Over to you, Patricia.
Thank you, Nikolay. I see that there are no specific questions in the chat currently, but if you have any questions, please feel free to put it into the chat. However, we also have questions that were collected beforehand. So for Nikolay or Diane, the questions are directed to both of you. And if any of you would like to answer, please feel free to turn on your microphone. So the first question that we received, what are the key reasons that you think Goal 4 and Goal 6 went from on track to be achieved to stagnant for this year? Because Goal 4 and 6 were actually on track in the previous year. So Nikolay, Diane, over to you.
Thank you, Patricia. My assessment and my vision says that, of course, COVID-19 influence was very negative for our North and Central Asia member states. I can tell you, for example, that nearly for Asia Pacific, if we look, and of course North and Central Asia is part of Asia Pacific, for the last report which we are presenting today, according to it, 829 million informal workers were impacted, in Asia and the Pacific. At least 850 million students lost almost half of their academic year. And if this is as far as goal 4 we are talking, this is quality education. And of course, it seriously influenced the water and sanitation issues, because, for example, according to the latest report, 154 to 280 tons more medical waste per day produced in some big cities in Asia Pacific. So you can see the negative impact of COVID-19 to these particular goals. So that is my assessment. What do you think, Dayan? Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Nikolay. I would like also to mention something interesting about this report is that every year we're able to collect more data on the indicators. So as you've seen before, the availability of data has increased over the years. And because of that, sometimes we see changes in the progress shown in the report that are due to the changes on the ground, like Mr. Nikolay has explained, but also changes that we see. They mean that we are seeing now a more clearer vision of the reality, because we have now access to more data. So we think that this trend will continue as more data becomes available as well, and we'll get a much more clearer vision of what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana and Nikolay. So following up on the children out of school, so Mikhail from Georgia is asking, what was the reason of such increase, since the presentation stated that there was a high number of children out of school? So the reason of such increase for the subregion.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Mikhail. I think due to COVID-19 impact, many children and many students faced problems with day-to-day education and were switched to distance education. And of course, if we look at the accessibility of distant education, online education, it's not equal among our member states. And second, what is also important, the gaps and inequalities between rural and urban possibilities for online education. When we organized our SDG forum, we found big gaps, especially and big problems for rural population to get similar access as in the cities for online education. So many schools, many children were impacted by this you see COVID-19 influence, and they were not in position to get similar access as in the cities to online education, and of course it was the reason.
Thank you, Nikolay. I would like to move to another question that we gathered beforehand on food insecurity, because that was one of the sub-regional insights that you highlighted. So do you think it is a temporary or persistent issue that's going to happen in the sub-region, and what measures can be taken by the countries to tackle this issue if it's temporary or persistent?
Thank you. Thank you. Of course, we can see this data that the situation with food security is vulnerable to many our member states. It happening due to climate change, frequent you see extreme weather events. It's also connected with water scarcity in our sub-region, because we have not the same fluctuation of the water cycles in our sub-region. So that and extreme weather events increasing due to climate change. So one more point, the drought situation is also deteriorated in not in particular countries, I would say, but in all North and Central Asia countries. Some countries which never faced such problems before, like for example Kyrgyzstan, now also facing the problems with drought. So this is the situation which all our member states currently faces. Regarding the period of this situation, we cannot predict, unfortunately, how it will be developing. But of course, definitely we need to take measures and to assist our member states with agricultural transformation and with climate change mitigation measures, definitely. Thank you.
So Diane, if you have anything to add to that, feel free to just unmute yourself and put on your video. If there is no intervention from your side, I see a few questions from the floor related to data. So from Natalia, where do we have the biggest data gaps in North and Central Asia? Maybe Diane, you're the best person to answer this. And what are some practical next steps that countries and the UN can take to overcome them? And also related to data, did you explore social system engineering approach for enabling countries to generate quality engineered data? This is from Bartosz. So if Diane, you can start, and Nikolay after that, what are the data gaps and what has UN done, and whether we explore social system engineering approach. Over to you.
Thank you, Patricia, and thank you for the questions. I'll just share a few words about the data side of this. For North and Central Asia, we have seen that the availability of data is lower than the average of the region, which means that there are more data gaps in this part of the Asia-Pacific region. And the gaps, we see that there are many indicators available for the social kind of indicators, the social economic indicators. Though over there, a lot of the gaps are still in the disaggregations, so that we can have a better in-depth look of the situation. However, when it comes to indicators where we don't have much data, they're mostly concentrated on the environmental goals, like goals 13 and 14 on climate change and the oceans, and also on goals 16 and 17, which have to deal more with governance and partnerships. In these places, data still is very, very low, not only in North and Central Asia, but also in Asia Pacific in general. And ESCAP is doing very important work in the region to be able to produce more data and strengthen the national statistical systems. And one of these is based on making use of more advanced data sources so that we can fill in those gaps. As it was mentioned in the comments, there is not just that, but many other sources of data that can be useful for assessing progress on the SDGs. And I'll like to highlight, for example, big data and geospatial data that can be very useful in targeting specific populations and being able to track in a much faster and in more with less delay. Yes, that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dayan. Anything to add, Nikolay?
Yes, I also would like to add that such reports which we are presenting today are very helpful to bridge the gaps which still exist. And as Dayan mentioned, I must tell you that, for example, if we look at this report for North and Central Asia, yeah, 24% of indices and indicators insufficient, and 21% not available. So practically half of data not available. So of course we need to strengthen statistics potential and statistic capacity of our member states in North and Central Asia. And for this purpose, ESCAP organizing regular training for member states. We have, as Dayan mentioned, we have Statistic Institute in Japan, which organizes training for many member states, and for North and Central Asia members too. And I had a talk with head of this institute, and they mentioned that they're planning special training for North and Central Asia states to strengthen statistic capacity. And additionally, I must tell you that ESCAP is implementing a few projects, especially focused for North and Central Asia in this particular area. At least 2 projects this year will be implementing for North and Central Asia, and special attention will be given to young statisticians. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nikolay. I have very useful information on what ESCAP is doing. So I do not see any further questions from the floor, and we are like nicely right on time. So if there are no further questions, I would like to say and wish everyone a good day. And thank you for joining us for this session. So for further details about the report, I think Dayan dropped some links into the chat that would be useful. And you can also visit our webpage at un.escap.org for other access to our resources. And before we leave, I would like to request everyone to turn on your video for a quick group photo before we end the session. Can we have everyone to turn on your videos, please? So I see just a few of us. Hold on. So I will, on the count of 3 then, if that works. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. And maybe one more. 1, 2, and 3. Oh, I see a secretariat was half on. All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you, dear colleagues, for your participation, and I wish you all success in your activities. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.